G'day guys, it's Swiler here. I have been wanting to do this for a while, and I felt that I might as well get out there and do it because I see so much misinformation out there and lots of narratives being pushed and all that sort of stuff. So I just want to push, I guess I kind of want to explain what I perceive when I hear people talk about narratives and where I kind of think they come from. And being a 2017 person, yeah, I wasn't really here when some of the OGs were all fighting about all this sort of stuff. So I guess I'm coming to it from a bit of a noob's perspective, and it's I think in general it's kind of the noobs which are the one trying to wrestle with these type of topics. So by me talking about this sort of stuff, it's me sort of wrestling with my own mind about how this sort of stuff plays out, and I believe that there are certain myths, and I want to go how I view this sort of stuff and why, I've sort of been trending more towards Bitcoin these days and, far less towards crypto per se. So we see a lot of things out there where people say, oh, yeah, Bitcoin's gold 2.0. Personally, I really don't care whether or not people say it's gold 2.0. I don't really think it really needs to have anything to do with gold, in fact, in its nature at all. But of course, yeah, some people go out there and tote this idea that Bitcoin, as per the white paper, and they go on and on and on and on about the white paper without talking about what the network actually does today. They go on about the white paper, and that was before it even really got started. So when you view the top line of the Bitcoin white paper, it says Bitcoin a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Now, the overuse of the fact that it says cash in it has been leading some people to go out there and continue to peddle this idea that it was cash from the beginning, was always going to be cash forever. Now, I have no doubt that eventually it will become some form of cash. But we've got to understand the limitations of the way Bitcoin's, evolved from the day that this was written. And, it's evolved and twisted, and people have understood it more, and people are grappling around it, and there's a push and fight to sort of figure out where it's actually going to go and what's the safest way to do that. So, obviously, there is too much people emphasizing on the cash factor, and so what they would call Bitcoin maximalists, are supposedly in the gold 2.0 camp. Now, was it really going to be cash from this perspective from the beginning? Now, while this white paper does, it just briefly talk about how it all works, and that its plan is to be a cash system. What you got to recall is that the first release of the actual network, the release of version 0.1, it actually breaks down. This was the first time when they actually decided to discuss the 21 million coins and the disinflation mechanism that was happening every 4 years. So all the halvings. So all of these. So in the first 4 years, it says here that 10.5 million coins get minted in the first 4 years, and then 5.2 million coins go and get minted in the second part. And so there's already a conflict right there between the actual white paper and between the first release, because the white paper says nothing about the 21 million in it, whereas this first release does. And so this part was obviously revealed after the white paper. So holding on to the white paper, I personally think that when you read the white paper, you also have to read this as well. And they need to be coupled together, personally, I feel, because one side is talking about cash and the other side is talking about something where pulling a limited amount of coins out and it never ending, becoming harder and harder to pull out, is something that is more akin to an early gold rush. So in an early gold rush, 1700s, 1600s, whatever, there would have been people, they could basically just pull back a bit of dirt and gold would just pop out. And then as the crops all got cleared and then they started digging down into holes, it starts to become harder and harder and harder. And so the actual process of actually getting Bitcoin, the gold out at that stage, got harder and harder and harder to the point where you started to have small pockets of gold which were actually too dangerous to get to, or they were too small. You would pan in the river and you'd get like one speck for an entire day's work, and it was just unfeasible to do so. And so that kind of is in line with the idea that these coins are going to get harder and harder to extract from the system. So having that hard extraction, and it being continuously regulated down as each halving happens, it does sort of put it into that gold 2.0 thing. Now, that's not me trying to say that it is gold 2.0. The reason why I'm actually talking about this topic is because a certain someone who keeps on touting the white paper as being a electronic cash system, also tells a story where they basically say that groups like Blockstream, and we love hearing all these rumors about Blockstream all the time, but always trying to control things, but I don't see it that way, and I'm new. I'm a new person, and I don't see it that way. I believe that the people who may have been with Blockstream, perhaps, they were all discussing in forums, and they were discussing the fact that it's signaling a lifestyle which is more like extracting gold, less than a cash system where everything is free flowing all the time, because it's with the actual minting of the actual coins, the price is starting to appreciate as the years are going on. And so people who are out there and they spend large amounts of coins years ago, like for instance, like the Bitcoin pizza, people now look at it from today's perspective and they go, my God, those pizzas cost $45 million today. And so there's a natural impression that happens within the minds of each person who buys and holds Bitcoin, that if they go out there and they go and buy a t-shirt for $30, today, that in 4 years that t-shirt might be worth, it might be worth the value of $5,000. So it's natural progression to go, should I actually be spending it, or should I be careful and spend and then replace and stuff like that? So it just happened naturally. This narrative of someone holding on to their coin because they realized that the t-shirt they bought that years ago, they now regret buying it for that price. That just happens naturally. So I don't believe that this was a narrative by Blockstream to go and co-opt the minds of everyone around them, because it was a natural part of everyone's mind that if you spent something now, that you may regret the lost value down the line if you did not spend and replace. When we look at this sort of stuff where it says Bitcoin Cash is fast, cheap, and reliable, it obviously has become slower because it's become more full. And to explain why certain people want to go over to the BCH side and say, look, our blockchain is heaps faster than what Bitcoin is, and the fees are so much lower. Well, what new people have to understand from perspective of people who are already in, is that back in 2011, the blockchain on Bitcoin was hard capped at 1 megabyte already. And this hard cap was put in by Satoshi. He put it into the code and no one picked it up until someone went back and reviewed it later. So Satoshi was actually the one who changed the actual block cap, and he did that to make sure that people didn't go and fill fill the blockchain full of spam transactions and just absolutely bloat the blockchain to infinity. And so by putting in that cap, he or she or whoever they are, Satoshi, they sort of crimped the size so that it would stay in check. And whether or not it was temporary or not, I still think it's a good idea going forward anyway, because it does give everyone the opportunity to be able to go and download a blockchain. We're 11 years in now, and we can download blockchains fairly easily. And the Bitcoin full node blockchain is in the 330 megabyte range. Gigabyte range. Sorry. So back when it was 2011, when the blocks were actually quite empty, it was very easy to simply go out there and make a payment. You could make a payment and you would know that it would fall into that first block no matter what. When it only fills up this much, this is a space of buffer. This is how much. This kind of guaranteed that no matter what your transaction was, it would get in that block. And once 2015, 2016 came, it started to reach that upper limit. So Satoshi set this. Blockstream didn't set this. Satoshi set it. So it was already there. And the block started to get full, which is great for us to download the blocks. But this was where all the debate was, because people would say that this was limiting it to 3 or 4 transactions per second, and that would be a big hindrance. So they obviously brought in Segware, and that did expand the amount of actual size you could fit into a BTC block. But when you come over and when the fork happened between BTC and BCH, the BCH chain went back to a very, very small amount of transactions here. So they had a similar amount of transactions as what the actual Bitcoin had back in 2011. So of course over here it is fast and cheap, because every single transaction that comes in instantly gets accepted. Now, whether or not this is 8 megabytes or 32 megabytes in size, it didn't really matter, because a lot of the times when you look at the block explorers, the actual amount of transactions that are filling it up are still, in general, on the grand scheme of things, apart from a couple of large explosions of big blocks, most of the blocks are well below what the Bitcoin block sizes are anyway. So most people on BCH are under the understanding that if you go and do a transaction, you will get in the next block no matter what. Whereas being in Bitcoin, you have to wait 1 or 2 blocks, maybe even 6 blocks to be able to go and get squeezed in if it's a heavy system. So yes, for them to say yes, it's fast, cheap, and reliable, it really is confusing people, because all the network traffic is over here. All the network traffic is still on the BTC version. So that's where all the activity is happening. There's no activity happening over here, and that's why it's all going in. And so this theory that it has more Bitcoinness because you can get fast, cheap, and reliable transactions in the block straight away is just simply imagining a world where it's 2011 all over again. But it's 2020 now. It's going to be 2020. It's going to be 2030 in 10 years, and 2040 in 20 years. We can't continue to imagine it's going to be 2011 forever. So eventually, if BCH is still around in 10 years, maybe it will have a similar size amount of transactions as Bitcoin there, and it's going to have its own challenges too. All those transactions are going to be fighting for space too. So, this is why every blockchain out there is all, fighting for relevance, because eventually they will all fill in some form or not, and they will all reach their own certain level of scaling issues eventually. So I prefer to stay with the BTC chain because you can download the full blockchain, and I believe that's where all the economic activity actually is, right in Bitcoin. So in summary, what I'm trying to say is I think that Bitcoin being, a gold 2.0 type disinflationary system, which makes people want to hold their value in the coin long term, was always naturally going to happen. And whether or not people wanted to go out there and turn the layer one into a cash system or not, it was generally always going to be a store of value in the long term. All right, thanks for listening.